The 2026 NFL schedule was released, so we have the full 18 game slate to break down for the New York Jets. We go week by week breaking down each and every game on the calendar. It's the DTereman Football Show, and it starts right now.
Be a winner. Not only have to understand how to win, but to understand how to consistently win.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the DTereman Football Show. I am your host, DT. Appreciate everybody for tuning in. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button if you are not already a subscriber of the channel. It certainly helps this channel grow a ton. The NFL has released their schedule last night, and we finally know the order of the games for the Jets. Now, we knew who the opponents were the week the regular season ended. We knew all our home, all our away opponents. We knew that we had 9 road games versus 8 home games with this weird 17-game scheduling. So, first and foremost, we will go over the entire schedule, weeks 1 through 18. Pulled it up on the graphic here. Week 1, on the road, Nashville, Tennessee against the Titans. Week 2, home opener against the Green Bay Packers. Week 3, on the road to Detroit against the Lions. Staying on the road, going to Chicago in week 4 to face the Bears. Coming home to play the Cleveland Browns in week 5. Week 6, we are on the road to New England before coming home in week 7 against the Dolphins. Week 8, we are staying at home, with the Las Vegas Raiders. Week 9, we travel to Kansas City. Week 10, we are back home against the Buffalo Bills. Week 11, we go on the road cross country to the Los Angeles Chargers, and then we stay on the road in week 12 against the Miami Dolphins. Week 13, bye week for the Jets, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Week 14 at home against Denver. Week 15, our second West Coast trip against the Arizona Cardinals. Week 16, home against the Patriots. Home against the Minnesota Vikings in week 17, and then finishing the season, what do you know, against the Buffalo Bills in week 18. So a lot to get into, a lot of positives, a lot of negatives. I went through and I looked at all of the other teams' schedules to come up with this overview or breakdown of the Jets schedule. So we're going to be talking about some of the key storylines in each week. Obviously, we can't really dig deep into the matchups per se, and we'll do a separate video where we go deep and look at the rosters and see where the Jets match up on paper well against these opponents. But for now, it's just an overview of some key storylines, maybe some rest advantage that the Jets may or may not have, and taking a look at who their prior week opponent is. So put together my slideshow as always. Week 1, on the road, Nashville, Tennessee against the Titans. First and foremost, it's a revenge game for every single person. Robert Saleh, obviously the head coach. I believe there's some positional coaches as well in Tennessee. Aaron White-Cotton for sure. They have a ton of former Jets players that played under Robert Saleh. Michael Carter, the running back. Jermaine Johnson, Solomon Thomas, John Franklin Myers. I believe Tony Adams as well. So a ton of Jets on the Titans, and then some former Titans on the Jets now. We traded mid-season for Jarvis Brownlee Jr., and then we made the trade a couple months ago for T'Vondre Sweat. So revenge games aplenty in this one for sure, and that's probably how we got to this being the week 1 matchup, is all of the drama surrounding Saleh being the former head coach, all the crossover on the roster there. So that's the first bullet point. The second one is the Jets need to get off to a fast start, and it kind of works into number 3, which is they are the better team on paper, in my opinion. I think there's a couple areas where the Jets could be bested by the Titans, but I do think majority of this roster, speaking for the Jets, is better than what I see on paper in Tennessee. And obviously, there's a lot to be said for the coaching, and Robert Saleh being the head coach, Brian Daboll being the offensive coordinator. You feel a little bit more comfortable than Aaron Glenn and Frank Reich as your offensive coordinator in New York, but I do think that we are a better matchup on paper, and you absolutely need to get off to a fast start. I don't really want to hear the media the week leading into week 2 all about Saleh and taking his pot shots at the Jets, saying this is what it's supposed to look like, and we knew this was what it was supposed to be under my head coaching. So this is what it's going to look like in Tennessee. It's going to be a lot better this time around. I don't want to hear any of that. I want to come in week 1 on the road. Jets fans are going to be fired up. I know a lot are going to be in attendance that week. So, can we get off to a hot start? Because I think that's going to dictate a lot of the early season momentum, the early season player morale, and also the early season, hot seat temperature check on Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji. So, the last bullet point, week 1, it certainly lies to us, right? We saw last year, even with our Jets, they lost 34-32 at home to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And if you told me walking into that stadium that Sunday morning that I was going to see 66 points put up on the board, I thought the Jets would have been getting run out of the stadium by the third quarter, and they're down 28 points in, garbage time, second half. And that was not the case. The Jets had the lead. The Jets had a chance to put it away. Xavier Gibson obviously fumbles. The team could not get up off the mat. So week 1 certainly lies in, the result of the week does not always dictate the season, but you do need to get off to a fast start. Week 2, we are home against the Green Bay Packers, our home opener. So again, if week 1 goes well or well enough and they either squeak out a win or they lose, but they look super competitive, give fans a reason to pack the HVAC stadium that is MetLife against the Green Bay Packers in the home opener, they are looking like they will not be fielding Micah Parsons, their number 1 defensive player, probably their number 1 player on the entire roster. And when you look at the Packers at the end of last season when Micah Parsons got hurt, they went 0-5, and their pressure percentage went from top 5 to dead last in the NFL over that last 5-week span of the season. So they kind of hobbled into the playoffs, and we'll see what it looks like without Micah Parsons to begin the season. The expectation is he's going to start on the physically unable to perform list, so that's going to knock him out for a minimum of 6 games. Now, things could change in his recovery process, and he could be ready, but I don't think he'll be 100% by week 2. So 0-5 without Micah Parsons, to me, can you steal a game at home? We saw what the Jets were able to do the last time they played the Packers 4 years ago. The notable Breece Hall run up the middle where he cuts it back and weaves through 10 defenders for Green Bay. Obviously, Sauce wearing the cheese head, all those fun moments we had then. But I do think week 2 with the Green Bay Packers, not knowing what they'll be with or without Micah Parsons, they're kind of a rocky start of a team, right? They're known to lose winnable games early on in the season before they really catch their stride. So, can the Jets take advantage? Can they steal one at home? Looking at the Packers week 1 matchup, it is at the Minnesota Vikings, so they will be coming off a divisional game to start the season, traveling a little bit to the East Coast for a 1:00 kickoff. No rest day advantage here for either side. Week 3, the Jets travel, staying in the NFC North. They go up to Detroit and they face the Detroit Lions. And obviously, the first headline you think of is Aaron Glenn's return to Detroit, where he was last a coordinator before becoming the Jets head coach. Obviously, being part of Detroit's turnaround, going from a bottom of the barrel team to a perennial playoff contender, we'll call them. I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender, but at times they looked like they could be. And Aaron Glenn was certainly a part of that turnaround. Obviously, Dan Campbell, the head coach, gets a lot of the credit there, but Aaron Glenn's return to Detroit, first and foremost. The next part is also a little bit of a revenge return, so to speak, and that's the revenge of the Seth. Seth Ryan, the, I guess, pass game coordinator, held a different title with Detroit, but was known to help Ben Johnson create a lot of the flash plays, the creative plays, the trick plays. So can Seth Ryan come back, go deep in his bag against his former team, the Detroit Lions, and help the Jets offensively become more of a modern style NFL offense? Then the next part, kind of like the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions had a down year last year. I believe they missed the playoffs by one game. So is this still a team that's trying to figure it out in the first month of the season? Can you keep it close, keep it competitive on the road? I'm not going to say that the Jets should be or will be favorites in this game. They're likely to be underdogs for a lot of this opening stretch, but this to me is the early September statement game, right? If you're 1-1 entering this matchup, I mean, obviously you could be 2-0, you obviously could be 0-2 as well, but if you're 1-1 in this matchup and you go into Detroit and you're able to, make a statement and win and come out of that with AG, head held high. The Jets aren't, kicking themselves for a late game loss or anything like that. This to me is another one of those momentum games that is going to carry through October, November into December. So this is one that helps get the ball rolling. Again, I don't anticipate it being a win, but it's certainly a game that you could catch the Lions sleeping a little bit. They are coming off a Thursday night game against the Buffalo Bills in week 2, so they will have a 3-day rest advantage on the Jets. And on the bottom, you see in parentheses is the total rest advantage in terms of days as we keep track of this throughout the schedule. Week 4, again, staying in the NFC North, going to Chicago. I believe the flights are short enough to go from Detroit back home and then fly out to Chicago later in the week. So the Jets will likely have a relatively normal practice week back in Florham Park before going back. I highly doubt they just fly from Detroit to Chicago and stay all week, right? It's not a West Coast trip. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to stay there. You can go home and then fly back to Chicago, but they are on a bit of a road trip here, second of 2 road games. The first bullet point is the head coach quarterback deficit. Now, we can feel good about Geno Smith and obviously the possibility of Frank Reich as offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams seem to be, the trending head coach quarterback combination as far as newcomer at head coach, right? Last year was his first year, and then very young quarterback entering his third season. So Ben Johnson notably said no to the Jets during the interview process when he took the job in Chicago, and we hired Aaron Glenn, but we didn't have a lot of the things we had in place. We were a team with no quarterback and the 7th overall pick in a class that at the time featured Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. We know what happened with Sanders. So were they going to be in the Jackson Dart territory or the Tyler Shuck territory to go get Ben Johnson as quarterback? So you understand why he told the Jets no, but that's also a bit of a storyline in this game as well. So can you chalk up the L? I feel like no matter where Chicago was on the schedule, it felt like it was going to be a loss in our minds on paper, probably when we get into the game. So this is the one where it feels like a definite loss in the first month of the season. And then the last bullet point is hold your own. Again, I don't anticipate or expect a lot against teams that were in the playoffs last year, but this is a game where you just can't get, 30-6 going into the fourth quarter and they're resting their starters and Tyson Bagent is throwing Luther Burden touchdown passes against our starters. So hold your own against Chicago, but I don't necessarily have high hopes for this game. They are coming off a Monday Night Football game against the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Jets gained back one day in rest advantage and now have just a 2-day disadvantage through the first month of the season. Week 5, the New York Jets host the Cleveland Browns. This, to me, is a very winnable game. And much like the Tennessee Titans, I should have included them in this category as well. You have to beat the teams in your tier. If you are a bad team, the expectation is you should be beating or at least competing with the other bad teams in the NFL, because we know the Jets certainly aren't the only bad team. And the Cleveland Browns, as well as a couple other teams on this schedule, like I mentioned just before, the Tennessee Titans, they're in that bucket, or they're in that range where the Jets should be looking at these games as a winnable game entering Sunday. So, very winnable game. The Jets, in my opinion, have the offensive advantage. Now, I don't mean that in terms of our offense versus the Browns defense. I mean that as in our offense versus the Browns offense. So, I do think Todd Monken is a good head coach. We'll see what his decision is ultimately at the quarterback position. Do they go with Deshaun Watson? Do they go with Shedeur Sanders or Dillon Gabriel? I don't think it's going to be Dillon Gabriel, but who is their starting quarterback? I think the Jets have enough offensive firepower to score, not at will, because the Browns defense is still very strong, but I do think the Browns are susceptible to allowing points, and the Jets need to take advantage of that matchup. So, possible favorite, again, I put that in here. This might be the first game in the first 5 games of the season where the Jets are favorited to win. So, can you take advantage of this matchup? Can you, even in a 1.5 point spread and basically a pick 'em type matchup, can you come away with a victory? The Browns are coming off a Thursday night football game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Jets lose another 3 days in the rest advantage category and are sitting at -5. Week 6 is the first of 6 divisional games. And unfortunately, it is one of back-to-back games. So this is the first one against the New England Patriots. You were kind of hoping it would be the Miami Dolphins earlier on in the season. Again, another one of those teams in that bucket, but it is the Patriots. Can you catch them on a Super Bowl hangover, right? Both the team that wins the Super Bowl and the team that loses the Super Bowl tend to have a Super Bowl hangover the following year. The Kansas City Chiefs lost the Super Bowl to the Eagles, and then they weren't able to make the playoffs. In fact, had a top 10 pick when it was all said and done last year in 2025. So can the Patriots have a bit of a Super Bowl hangover? And then peeking into the matchups a little bit, David Bailey versus Will Campbell. You're talking about a guy with extreme length on the defensive line in Bailey versus a guy who is notably criticized for his arm length and how ineffective at times he is as a pass protector for Drake May. So David Bailey versus Will Campbell is a matchup I certainly will be watching. The Patriots are coming off a game at home against the Las Vegas Raiders, so no rest advantage here, still at -5 days. Week 7, back-to-back divisional games. This one is at home against the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins have a ton of new on this team, a new GM in John Eric Sullivan over from the Green Bay Packers, new head coach in Jeff Hafley from the same team, and they also have a new quarterback in Malik Willis. What do you know? Also from the Green Bay Packers. So a ton of new. By week 7, we should know a little bit more about what the Dolphins are going to look like. So would have been a good team to start the season off with because there is so much unknown and it is a winnable game. But week 7 is a fine spot for Miami. This one is at home in October. So, sneak peek, the Jets are going to Miami later on in the season when it is a little bit better weather-wise in Miami. So, no September weather game. I put March for Arch as one of the storylines because who knows what the Jets are going to look like through 6 games? Who knows what the Dolphins are going to look like through 6 games? Is this a game where we're already looking at mock draft projections in the end of October, right before Halloween? So this could be a March for Arch game or a game where both teams are looking at the future as opposed to the present. Unfortunately, the Dolphins are coming off a bye week in week 6, so the Jets lose another 7 days on the rest advantage counter. They are at negative 12 days. Week 8, they are home against the Las Vegas Raiders. This is a mini home stretch, 2 games back to back at home. Number 1 versus number 2 overall pick, Fernando Mendoza versus David Bailey. It's going to be probably one of the most talked about things in the lead up to this matchup. They have a new head coach in Clint Kubiak and a new quarterback in Fernando Mendoza and Kirk Cousins as well. This is a West Coast team traveling to the East Coast for a 1 o'clock game. And historically, the stats show that the East Coast team has a huge advantage when these things happen. So not only is it a winnable game, again, beating the teams in your own tier. The Raiders are another bad team. They were the only team that picked before the Jets in the draft last year. So beat the teams in your tier, especially given the huge travel advantage that you have this week. Now, we don't get a rest advantage because they have a Sunday game against the Los Angeles Rams, but still negative 12 days for the Jets. Before we keep going, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We will be pumping out a ton of content surrounding the schedule, going into deeper dives, breaking down the matchups in detail. We will also be doing a score prediction at some point. I'm not going to do it in this video because I don't think 24 hours after the schedule comes out, like the ink hasn't dried on the schedule, I don't think it's smart to make a prediction right now because then I'm just going to get stuck and locked into that prediction. But I will give a range of where the wins should be for the Jets at the end. All right, week 9, going to face another AFC West opponent, this time on the road at Arrowhead Stadium against the Kansas City Chiefs. By week 9, we should know Mahomes' health status. We know they have Justin Fields. They got in the trade from us. But is Mahomes healthy and ready to go by week 9? I think he should be. I know he's trying to play by week 1 of the season, coming off the ACL or the Achilles injury. So I know that Mahomes should be healthy by this point. What is the percentage of health? Is he 90%? Is he 85%? Is he 100% by week 9? So I anticipate him being the quarterback. Talked about it a little bit before. The Chiefs want to rebound after their Super Bowl hangover year last year. And unfortunately, this is the start of a not so fun stretch for the New York Jets. Weeks 9 through 14 is pretty vicious, even though there is a bye week in the middle of that. But this is the start of a not so fun stretch for the Jets. So I have it pretty emphatically. It's going to be a big L for the Jets. Now, can they surprise us? I know they had that one game with Zach Wilson and Allen Lazard a couple years ago where they kept it close with the Chiefs into the second half. We'll see what the Chiefs look like at this point in the season, but I would anticipate L for the Jets in this one. They are coming off a road game against the Broncos, but it is on a Sunday, so again, no rest advantage in this one. Week 10, the first of 2 matchups with the Buffalo Bills. This one is at home. We need to find the Josh Allen stopper on this defense, first and foremost. I'm tired of watching Josh Allen on 3rd and 5 to 3rd and 8 keep the ball on a zone read or a scramble rollout and tuck it and run, break 3 tackles, and get the first down. I'm very tired of that. That's why I was a big advocate of Arvell Reese. Can David Bailey prove to be just as effective as a Josh Allen stopper, despite being more of a traditional pass rusher versus Arvell Reese being used more as a spy and off ball? Keep it competitive. The one thing I will say about the Robert Saleh-led teams of the past is that the Jets played Buffalo close. It always felt like their roster was tailored to compete against Buffalo, and that's what it should be, right? Compete to win against the teams in your division. It's the easiest path to the playoffs. So keep it competitive. I don't want 30-0, like I mentioned before. That was the week 2 score when Justin Fields was knocked out with a concussion, and they were basically laughing at us. And then the third bullet point was Deion Dawkins was right. And until we actually see results on the field of wins or competitive games at a minimum. Dion Dawkins is going to continue to be right about this team. The mentality, the morale, the energy, the fight, the physicality, it needs to show up this year to prove Dion Dawkins wrong. Buffalo is coming off a Monday night game on the road against Minnesota, so 1 day rest advantage back in the Jets' favor. Week 11, we are on the road, first of 2 West Coast trips to take on the Los Angeles Chargers. One bullet point I have is because it's week 11, what is at stake? What does the Jets roster or record, look like through 10 games of the season? What are they playing for? What are the stakes of this game? Have we already transitioned? Have we lost Geno Smith to injury? What are the stakes? I want to know what that is before I really give a prediction for this game, because I do think the Chargers, while they are a much better team on paper, and we are a heavy underdog in this matchup, I would assume. The Chargers are leaky, and there are games where they play down to their opponent. They kind of sleepwalk through the first 3 quarters, and all of a sudden they have to play from behind in the fourth quarter. Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh are a better coach quarterback combination than what we currently have. But what is at stake in this game? I want to see what the first 10 weeks look like for both teams to know a little bit more about this wild card matchup. They are also coming off a Monday night game against the Baltimore Ravens, so we do get 1 day back in rest advantage. Week 12, our second matchup against the Miami Dolphins, this time on the road, but it is November 29th, so post-Thanksgiving festivities are in the books. We will all be well fed and ready to watch the Jets take on the Dolphins in what should be a very good weather game in Miami. The first storyline I have is Miami Geno. Coincidentally, it is like the Thanksgiving week, like I said, so is he going to be down visiting some family while he's in Miami? Back where he grew up. I think it's a cool thing when Geno gets to go back to Miami, because it always reminds me, from a Jets perspective at least, of that perfect game in Week 17 under Rex Ryan, where he's getting fanned on the sidelines by all the players. So Miami Geno, can we get the best version of him in this game? Do we have the potential to sweep? What did the first game look like? How can we build off that if it's a win? How can we go back to the drawing board if it's a loss and come back and win against the Dolphins? My expectation is you should split at the bare minimum with Miami. Please don't lose both games to Miami. And if you do lose one, you have to win the second one. I want them to sweep Miami. I think only having 2 wins in the division is not enough. I think you need to go closer to 3-3. But Miami is our best chance at least a sweep potential here. Miami is coming off a road game against Buffalo on a Sunday, so no rest advantage. Jets have a Week 13 bye pretty late in the year, so unfortunate that we have to wait so long to get the bye week. But of all the things to complain about with this schedule, I don't think the Week 13 bye is too crazy. Week 14, coming off the bye, the second West Coast team making the trip for a 1 o'clock kick. No post-bye slump. Please get that out of your system. The Jets have had a problem coming out of the bye week, ready to go for that next game. They got the monkey off their back last year. They were able to beat Cleveland after the bye. Keep that momentum going under AG, because it's always rough. 2 weeks of game prep and you come out flat. The Broncos might as well be the fourth rival in the AFC East at this point. Their matchup is the 9th in the last 10 years between the Broncos and Jets. So just put them in the division, realign the divisions, make sure the Broncos are in there, because it always seems like the Jets are playing them. And then the last storyline is make your kicks in the rain. We know what happened the last time the Jets played the Broncos at home. They missed some kicks. Thank you, Greg Zuerlein. So that's definitely something I'm looking for in this matchup. If it is bad weather, a lot of these games tend to be low scoring, very close throughout the entirety of the game. Could come down to making your kicks. And if it is, unexpected or unfavorable conditions, just make your kicks in the rain, please. Obviously, we are coming off our bye week. Denver, however, has a game Sunday in week 13 against the Dolphins, so the Jets gain back 7 days of rest advantage. Week 15, we are taking our second West Coast trip against the Arizona Cardinals. Another team in that bucket, win against other bad teams. This is the Mike LaFleur revenge game. I'm sure he's going to want to run up the score, put as many offensive points on the board as possible against us. Unfortunately, we don't know what it's going to look like for either team in this scenario, and they're both projected to have low win totals. So, is this another March for Arch game? Are we watching Cade Klubnik versus Carson Beck, right? Third and fourth round picks of this last year's draft. So, what is really going to be on the line for both teams other than Mike LaFleur wanting to get a little bit of revenge against perhaps Woody Johnson? Arizona's coming off a Sunday game against the Eagles, so no rest advantage there. Week 16, our second matchup against the Patriots. I don't anticipate being, favored to win any of these divisional games outside the Miami ones. So can you just play spoiler? If New England is having a down year and they're hovering around 500 at this point in the year, they're not a shoe-in for the postseason. Can you play spoiler? Can you just have enough energy for that one day? Have you not thrown in the towel already on the season? Hopefully that's not the case, but can you go out there with a little bit extra to play for? If we're not playing for the playoffs, at least play to keep our division rivals out. Nothing's going to make me more upset than watching New England and Buffalo perennially make the playoffs while the Jets still struggle to break 500. So play spoiler. Don't throw in the towel on the season. Hopefully they haven't at this point at week 16. Previous opponent is the Chiefs on the road on a Monday night, so the Jets gain a day back in rest advantage. Week 17, the fourth of their NFC North matchups, Minnesota Vikings. This is a home matchup. So at this point, the first thing, and I should have included this as well, it's an indoor team traveling to the East Coast in December. Now, obviously, or in January, excuse me. Now, they obviously play the Bears and the Packers, divisional teams that play outside in the cold in the North, but they are a dome team going outside in January. So a little bit of something to look at there. Who is their quarterback? Is it J.J. McCarthy? Is it Kyler Murray? How hot is the hot seat for Kevin O'Connell, right? Is he looking like he's going to be on his way out in Minnesota? Are the Jets looking at him as a potential future head coaching option? I know a lot of Jets fans seemingly are already on board with that potential. And the Minnesota Vikings are a high variance team. They're probably a better team on paper, right? They obviously have a lot of offensive firepower and a really good defense too. I don't know what to expect. They're a bit of an X factor team. Could they be way out of the playoffs by this time and they're just trying to see what they have for the future? Are they, really taking the league by storm and they're winning way more than projected and Kyler Murray is turning it around and he's leading that team to some success? Either way, I think the Vikings are a high variance team. Their previous opponent is a Sunday game against the Commanders, so no rest advantage. And then week 18 at the Buffalo Bills in their new stadium to close out the regular season slate. Much like the Patriots in week 16, can you play spoiler? Can you stop them from making it to the 1 seed in the AFC or potentially out of the playoffs altogether? Will the Buffalo Bills be resting their starters, right? We've seen them play Josh Allen for one snap and then he comes out and Mitch Trubisky lights us up. So will they be resting starters at this point in the season? I don't want to bank on that. And I certainly don't want a petty win because they rested their starters. Now, if Buffalo is in the playoffs and the Jets, hopefully, if they're in range to make the playoffs in week 18, I think the Bills would do everything in their power to beat the Jets, not rest their starters, so that they keep us out of the playoffs and keep that drought going. So regardless of the circumstance, please just finish strong. Don't end the year like it was last year, where immediately after opening kickoff, we were all doing the Brian Costello. 48 minutes left until the season's over. 22 minutes left until the season's over. 1 quarter left. And I don't want to do that in week 18 again. So can the Jets at least finish strong? Their week 17 opponent is the Miami Dolphins on a Sunday, so no rest advantage there. And then just some overall thoughts about the roster here. Once again, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. We are on the road to 5,000 subs. I certainly appreciate it. Looking at the schedule overall, 15 1 o'clock games, 2 4:30 kickoffs, and that is the Chargers and the Cardinals, the two West Coast games, of course. So that means no primetime games, no international games for the New York Jets this year. I believe it's the first time since 1981 that the Jets don't have a primetime game. And I also believe that was the season that they broke their own playoff drought. I don't know how many years it was going on at that point in the 80s, but I do remember seeing the Jets history account on Twitter talking about 1981, no primetime games, and they snapped their playoff drought. No international games. I'm okay with it. I do like waking up early and watching the 9:30 slate of games. I usually like watching other teams because there's a lot of prep work that goes into, getting everything ready before a Jets game because I'm going to be locked in for the next 3.5 hours. Whereas other games, I can get up and I can do a couple things around the house while that game's going on. So I don't mind it. I feel for the guys across the pond because I know that they were expecting or hoping for one over there. So no international games for the Jets in 2026. Couple pros and cons of the roster. We'll go through the pros first. Minimal early season travel. I think Chicago is the furthest west they travel in the first 7-8 weeks of the season. If you want to go all the way to week 9, they travel to Kansas City. So they're really not going very far until that trip to LA in week 11. So early season travel is minimal. They have a pretty consistent weekly routine. Everything is at Sunday, 1 o'clock, and it's going to be 1 o'clock local time for them. So they'll be able to get back, have a normal Monday recovery, film, practice, meetings, walk through. All of that will generally be routine for the Jets and pretty consistent throughout the season here. So that is definitely a positive for a player recovery standpoint, a coaching game planning standpoint. I do think that's important. They have a neutral rest advantage of 0 days. So there is no real, oh, wow, the Jets, they have 2 weeks less of a rest advantage because of how many primetime games they have and things like that. So the lack of primetime games helps in the rest advantage category. So a 0 day neutral rest advantage is very good. The last one is for opponents who are coming off a Monday night game. I think that's really important because it does give them a shorter week against the Jets. Their game planning and things, if they're traveling, especially to MetLife, could be a little haywire, a little hectic. They might not be able to install a full week of game planning coming off a Monday night game going into a Sunday game. I know a lot of times Sunday into Thursday games, they kind of roll over the game plan from the week before, kind of tinker it a little bit, but for opponents coming off Monday night games is a plus. Now, a couple of the cons, tough starting 6. Tennessee and Cleveland look like the most winnable games of those 6. Green Bay you can throw in as like a toss-up, but Detroit, Chicago, and New England in week 6, that's going to be a bit of a tough stretch. Can the Jets come out of that 2-4, 3-3? I think a lot of Jets fans will feel really good about what the season looks like if they're able to get over that hump at, hovering around a 500 record. 1-5 is not going to cut it. 0-6 is getting everybody fired by the bye week. So a tough starting 6 for sure. The other con is two separate West Coast trips. I was hoping they would kind of package these together. You go to LA, you go to Arizona the next week, and then you go home. Unfortunately, not the case. So two separate West Coast trips. They do have the LA game and then the Miami game back to back on the road before the bye. But Miami is enough of a short trip, a short flight where they can come home from LA Sunday night, do all their normal routine work in Florham Park, and then head to Miami on a quick 1 hour, hour and a half flight down to Miami. So we'll see what the travel plans look like, but two separate West Coast trips. And then the last one, and I think this is the most important, weeks 9 through 14 is a very tough stretch. At Kansas City, home against Buffalo, at the Chargers, at Miami, a bye week, and then home against Denver. So two really tough road games in the Chiefs and the Chargers, a toss-up of a road game in Miami, a pretty hard home game in Buffalo, a toss-up of a home game in Denver, and then a bye week baked in. Week 13 bye, not the greatest, not the worst, right? I think this is one of the latest bye weeks allowed by the league because they get too close to the playoffs. It's almost not even worth having a week 15 bye. So I think 13 or 14 is the cutoff for bye weeks. So definitely at the back end of the schedule here, but I'd actually rather a week 13 bye as opposed to a week 5 bye week. I feel like the earliest bye weeks aren't great. And then you have to play a ton of games in a row when the war of attrition starts setting in November, December. You have that break right after the Miami game, right after Thanksgiving. You have the bye week to recover first week of December. Hopefully we're still, in the hunt or we're lurking in the graphics, the playoff graphics. So week 13 bye, not great, but it does kind of help break up this bit of a mini gauntlet here of weeks 9 through 14. So that's going to do it for this one. Again, I will be going deeper into the matchups, looking at all the rosters and seeing where the Jets match up best, match up the worst. We'll go through all those matchups as we get a little bit closer, and then we will eventually do our season predictions. Right now, I would say anywhere from 6 on a low end, and it's probably not saving jobs. 6 on a low end, 9 games on a high end. If everything breaks right for the Jets, they win a couple matchups that they probably shouldn't have. They take care of the matchups that they should be taking care of, winning the games in the same tier against other bad teams. So 6 wins to 9 wins. I know it's a big range, but I'm not trying to pigeonhole myself into a strict prediction right now because it is only the middle of May. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What matchups are you most excited for? Which ones are you the most nervous for? Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. DT signing out saying, let's go Jets.